All right.
Okay.
So guys, welcome to another edition of Fully Booked Meets. You hear myself, mate.
Myself, French.
Myself, Andrew.
And today we're joined by the author of The Soul Rebellion, Elizabeth Young. So I'm just going to clap you in a little, it's my thing. Thanks for coming on and joining us. Yeah?
Hi, guys.
Hi. I understand that you also go by the name Khadija. I just want to know which one we're going to use on the podcast going forward.
Khadija is my Islamic name.
Okay.
I tend to refer to it as my higher self, but we'll go with Elizabeth for sake of the book and my pen name.
Right. So when Pocker, so we call Andrew Pocker, yeah? So when Pocker kind of told us about yourself, because he kind of reached out to you at the beginning, you kind of told us a bit about yourself and about the book you've written and the depths to which surround yourself. Like there's much more than just the book. And so I just want you to kind of give us an overview about yourself, where you've come from, and how you came about to kind of writing The Soul Rebellion, and we'll touch on other stuff as well, yeah? So just give us a quick overview.
Okay, cool. So my history, I've come from in my younger days, the gang, I've like in the gang culture, growing up having lots of experience of dysfunctional relationships and just finding myself as a person that was very much wanting to be free. That rhetoric has always followed me wherever I've been, whether it's school, whether it was in the church setting, or just that feeling of wanting to be free. And so growing up and coming into my adulthood, I've had to really learn to overcome a lot of narratives and really walk into finding myself and just working and knowing my true self.
Okay, cool. You spoke a little bit about like growing up in, so what, did you grow up in a kind of gang environment or gang part, because you're from London, right?
I'm originally from South of the Waters. I'm a South London girl.
South London girl. So in terms of your environment, growing up, was you in and around a kind of gang area, or that life? Were you drawn to that life, or was it just you were born into it?
Definitely much drawn to that life. My parents, raised in a Christian household, two-parent family. My parents done a remarkable job in raising me and putting great discipline and principles inside of me as a young child. But that was, for me, it was like I wanted what was out there in the world. I wanted to go and experience what was going on. So from a very young age, I was, sneaking out to go to the parties down at the youth club, and, and then it just evolved from there. I originally lived in, I don't know if you know, are you South Londoners at all?
We're West London.
You're West London.
We know South though, we know South.
You know South, okay.
Yeah,
so basically I lived in an area called Wandsworth.
Yeah.
You know Wandsworth. And so I started to have gang association in the Clapham Junction area. Okay. So that was me growing up, basically.
What drew you to getting involved in the gang culture, so to speak?
I'm going to be honest. Where it came from, where it initiated from, it wasn't me getting involved into badness. My association with the gang culture came from from promiscuity. So that actually, from me being involved with guys and boys and just being in that circle. And so that's how that's how I got my involvement in it.
What about some of your girlfriends? Was it just you by yourself, or was it like a clique of you that was?
There was a crew of us. There was a crew of us that hanged out together. If you knew any of the man them that was around us, they built us up quite roughly and placed quite like principles and I guess disciplines in us as girls that was associated with them. So we went through a lot of initiations.
Cool. Do you want to speak on the initiations, just to give the listeners, because some people may not know what goes down in the gangs or certain things that you have to do or actually go through in general. They only may know what they hear on a program or maybe on like a TV. So, like, as a real life experience, what sort of things did you have to do?
Initiations were just them. They'll be rough with us violently, and we accepted that. Well, we socially accepted that as a norm. And there'll be times that there was one occasion I was stabbed in my right leg. I was gassed, but these were just. It was, yeah.
that was you getting jumped in, essentially.
Yeah, this was a norm. This was a norm for us. This was them toughening us up.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything outside of, like, we didn't see it as abusive almost. Mm-hmm. It was just a norm. It was us rolling with the man them, and that was just a part and parcel. Yes. But it wasn't always violent. You know, it was, you know, you rolled with them, you kept up with them, you rolled with them. So
yeah, there was perks. I would assume there's perks.
Yeah.
What kind of age are we talking here, Elizabeth, that you were involved in and around that kind of that environment?
14, 15, until I fell pregnant at the age of 16. So my first child was at the age of 16 years old.
Wow. Okay. Cool. And then what happens with that? Is it a case that you just kind of grow up and it's just like, well, I'm a mum to be. I've just become a mum. I can't have this environment. What happens after that?
No, you evolve in your environment, but the evolution of self is not yet. That takes some time. So okay. Although I've moved area, I've now got my own home. You know, I'm now raising a child. The mindset is still the same. So I've left that behind, but the situation is just evolved into another circumstance. It's the same thing, but a different circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that clear?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I had a question. Sorry, like you mentioned, obviously in the book that you steered away from like principles and some of the values that you had in your upbringing. And I want you to maybe like expound on those. I know you said that you're quite an independent person, but like I think some of the narratives out there is that we come from like bad homes when that actually isn't the case. And I just thought it might be interesting for you to maybe just give examples of maybe your upbringing.
Well, I was raised in a Christian home. Both my parents are Christian, and they were full-on Christians. We spent a lot of time in church. And so the values that mum and dad always instilled in us, you know, obviously was around the relationships that we keep, you know, the friends that we have, obviously schoolwork. In my house, my mum always looked at me as she always called me the intelligent one. And her cry was always, if I had money to send you to private school, if I had money to send you to private school. And so she always, you know, enforced on us about the education. Both parents enforced on us about education. And obviously it was the spiritual aspect also, you know, to love God and, you know, be good and all of those things that come with religious narrative. So those are the things that mum and dad instilled in me as a young person. And I think from a young age, like I rebelled from that very early. Like I didn't want to hear it. And so that's what set me on my own path to stay away from the principles that they had brought me up in.
Cool. Like in addition to that, I mean, I had this conversation with someone today as to, and I forget the actual sentence I used. I said that it was essentially circumstances out of my control made me who I was, you know, and I have core principles, but unfortunately, due to my environment, I became a different person. And as to kind of like what I said earlier, I think there's a narrative out there to which, let's say those from, and I don't even like using the word, from urban neighborhoods, we're just bad people, when there's a lot more to the story than actually meets the eye. And like, I don't know, you might want to expand on it a little bit, but I mean, like, to my next question, like, for any young women listening or otherwise, how do you kind of like navigate through like some of your struggles? Because obviously I know you said you had a child.
I think everything boils down to, fundamentally, I think one of the core things that is important is the types of people that you have around you. And so I say that if you've got a whole group of people and all of them have one type of mindset or a type of way, and they only see life a specific way, then it kind of leaves you, or it kind of, there's nothing really to dig down into yourself and bring you out into another perspective or a renewed mindset. So for me, where change actually started taking place was when I joined the church. So that's not to disregard my friends and the people that I had around, and it's not to play down on my relationship with them. But the time where my life took a significant change is because of spirituality. That's when my life took a significant change, where I could then start unpicking and start to understand certain things. So, yeah, I hope that answers. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I have another question as to that, because I come from a Christian background myself, and my parents, or my mum to be exact, and follows the religion quite, I don't even know how to say, but she follows the religion, okay? And I understand, so I'm trying to not speak too loud because I know my mum's in the other room. I know my mum's in the room, which sounds crazy, right? So like, I understand exactly what you're talking about, and I've almost forgot the question out of fear. No, joking. No, so I almost forgot the question in that. I want to, you know, there is a friction, you know, as to sometimes you can feel that the religion, or just being under your parents' rule and going back and forth from church and it being in your household can suffocate you. I mean, is that how you felt? I don't know if you want
to. Most definitely. I was always, and I've spoke about this in the book, I was always seen or said to be rebellious. That's a title that has followed me. But as I grew as a woman and coming into myself, I realized that what they called rebellion was that I didn't want to take things just as it was given to me. So I couldn't, Mum would say, I don't want to make this religious, but Mum would say Jesus is Lord. I would want to know why Jesus is Lord, how Jesus is Lord. So it was I never took things for face value, and that's always been something inside of me. And so I feel like that's the reason why that narrative of rebellious has kind of like followed me. But I've learned to transmute that into a freedom fighter almost, you know, because I won't take things just as they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have one more question. I'm sorry, I have a few questions actually. I have one more question.
Fine, go.
Then I thought it'd be a good idea, obviously, if you actually go into the book, because we're actually asking you quite actual personal questions, which I'm sure are linked to the book. So in some reading that I've done, it says the rebellion is a mark and the beginning of self-love, which I thought was very powerful, and I've never really looked at it from that point of view. And if I think of examples, actually I don't know if it's a poor example, but if we think of the recent Batman film, and was the Joker? Joker was a rebellion. Not that I'm not too sure, but I can't think of the link of love at this moment in time. But I definitely resonate with what you said. Then let's think of Extinction Rebellion, no pun intended as to their brand, as to them being Extinction Rebellion, but there's a sense of love and there's a passion as to why they do what they do. And there are a number of other people I'm sure I can name and I can point out as to their rebellious acts, and it being obviously an act of self-love. So do you want to maybe expand on that and actually go into your book? Because when I read passages of your book, or not necessarily of your book, sorry, when I read passages obviously as to what your book was about, I was really intrigued as to obviously hearing from you and hearing more about the book.
Elizabeth, before you do that, because it's kind of linked to Pocker's question, I just kind of wanted to know the path that actually led you to even thinking about writing that book. So it's part of the answer to Pocker's question. I just want to know that as well. So what's the path that led you? I know that like you found the church at a certain age, you've had your little one quite young, and then eventually found the church. And also I know you've got an Islamic name, Khadija. So are you now Islamic?
I am Muslim.
Sorry, Muslim. Sorry. That's me showing my nerves. Anyway. Yeah, Muslim. So yeah, I want to know that how the book came about.
Race. I think we should let her answer P's question, because that sounds like she's going to be loaded with too much information to answer. So let her answer P's question, then come back with yours.
Refresh me off P's question again. He said you asked about the self-love.
P,
I almost forgot my question was, but I mean, essentially my question was, did you want to explain obviously what your book was about?
Okay. So the Soul Rebellion is merely the advancement and the evolution of oneself through the act of self-love. Okay. So it's learning to love yourself and understand the good, the bad, and the ugly of oneself. Now, in life, we have external narratives, and we have popular culture, and we have society constructs that determine or influence who we are as individuals. And so my work really is just about me learning and continuing that process of going inside of myself, loving myself, and rebelling from the soulish part of who I am. And that's, if you want to call it the heart, if you want to call it the spirit, if you want to call it all of those things, we have to learn to go through life knowing who we are from an innate part, knowing who we are from a spiritual perspective, and being able to imprint and place your mark in the world from that, as opposed to the external influences that we might wear, whether it's stereotypes or people's words or negative, words or rhetorics that have always over us and suppress us. So that's really what the book is about, and it's my work, my walk, and my journey through that.
Yeah. How do you, so you mentioned quite a few interesting points there. How do you do that in this everyday society? Because I was saying to the boys before we came on air, I probably had such a terrible week last week where I felt quite down. And I said, this week's a new week and I pick myself up. But do you, every day, how do you get up and feel that way about like kind of just this kind of looking into yourself and thinking about the positives and just staying positive and thinking about growth and development? Because as I said, I had a pretty crappy week last week and I couldn't find out of that.
Sorry to cut you. It's not actually really about staying positive. It's actually about having awareness. Okay. It's not an ideal concept to think that everything in life is completely positive. Mm-hmm. A good example that you can have, if you look at the yin and yang visually, you understand that there's good in the bad and there's bad in the good. And once you start to understand that there's polarity, so we have opposite ends of one pole, but it's actually one entity. So inside of us, we have, the God state, and we have the lowest state of being, but it's learning to embrace the whole of who you are. So that means when you are having a bad day, you can recognize, your awareness is brought to it. You can recognize you're having a bad day, and this is what I need to do do you understand what I'm saying? Instead of what normally keeps us in a bad space is that our lack of acceptance of who we are. So it binds us up almost, because you start beating yourself up. I haven't done this and I haven't done that, and I'm not this person and I'm not that person. It's the acceptance of who you are as an individual. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, like I'll share with you, like, so you can understand it from a physical, like from the physical. Like now I'm now 41, and I'm starting, like, the aging thing starting to happen. You see the little grey hair then start secrets up and, you know, them types of things. So this is a new space for me of understanding and knowing myself and embracing myself. Like I've never really had been image conscious. So this is a new space for me. So I have to learn to love with the you know, whilst I'm working to transform, whether it's weight-wise, whether it's how am I gonna work this out, am I gonna wear it with pride, am I gonna cover it with my grace? It's my awareness to it and loving myself through that process. So does that help make it in a physical way that you can embrace what I'm saying? Yeah. So basically there is the good, the bad and the ugly, and the world does not allow us at all to do the bad and the ugly. It only wants to present the good, the good, the good, the good, and it's an unrealistic measure to life.
That you just summed up Instagram, in my opinion.
Yes. yes. I have a really funny relationship with social media. I'll be honest, I don't like it. I've only found a love for it, obviously over this time of COVID, where I've been able to reach out to my friends and family when there's been distance. But there'll be times I've gone off social media for a whole 4 years. And the reason is I can't get it because nobody is posting the pictures of their noodles, what they had for dinner. You understand what I'm saying? Sorry.
Okay.
Random Bob Marley just come on. So there was a frustration with me because I want us to learn to just be and be able to embrace it all. But yeah, society just doesn't allow it.
See, I guess speaking on society and allowing it, would you say that you're now at a stage where you want to be the change that you want to see? So in the sense that you've written this book and you're putting yourself out there and you're being vulnerable and you want to show those pictures of those noodles. You want to show those pictures of, all right, cool, I've got my grays out. I've got my grays out. I ride the bike still, you know what I'm saying? But, are you at that stage, and is that the message that you're trying to imply?
Absolutely, 101. I'm still on. Every day is a process. I'm still
a journey. Everyone's on a journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very much. I've been very much a sheltered person, and I introvert. I have long times where I like to be in my own space. So yes, me presenting myself to the world in this interview, it's like, you know, presenting myself. But when I'm in the space, you can say something.
No, I agreed. I said, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's it basically.
Just going back to a point that you made earlier in regards to like the people that you was running around with and whatnot. What would you say was the catalyst to get you back into the church?
I felt like my life was falling apart. My partner at the time had, okay, I said I'm going to be transparent. So my house had been raided. My partner at the time, he had been arrested and he was on remand. And at that time, I needed something. I'd run out of myself. I'd been on the road. I was running up and down doing
XYZ.
XYZ. I was tired and I'd run out of myself. And so the natural thing for me was to go to church. That's what I knew. That's what I was raised in. And so that was the natural progression, is to go to church. And I stepped into church and I literally wailed as I stepped into the church because I was carrying a lot. I was carrying, you know, you go through, I think sometimes when we're out and about and we're moving around and we're flipping this and we're changing this and we're doing that and you're just going and you don't realize how much weight you're carrying. Mm-hmm. And I literally stepped into the church doors and I wailed. And that was, I guess, a release. And it was the next step of my journey of understanding spirituality.
And like, just, I guess, because we've got a varied listenership, so from young to an older generation, like if we're just to kind of, I guess, give advice to a younger generation, because a lot of them are still doing the same thing. Like, we repeat the process. So there's a younger you that was doing what you're doing right now. You know what I'm saying? So what advice would you give to that person? And would you say that they would also go in the direction of church or otherwise?
The first bit of advice that I would give is that you are not your circumstance. You are not what's happened to you. You are not anything that is surrounding you. You are not. The space in which I don't know why this Bob Marley keep kicking off on my phone. Sorry. For them to understand that you are not your circumstance. I don't care what you've been through. If it's a female and you've been in abusive relationships, you're on the road and you're, involved in, you are not your circumstance. There's your environment around you. It plays a major part, but it's not the infinite part of who you are. And so I'm not going to tell no one to go left or right in terms of spirituality. But what I will say is that begin to look into spirituality. Everything is a process. I started off in church, and with information, my belief system changed. So everything's a process. So it's like, where do you go? There's so much schools of thoughts that is about, like, where do you go? Do I turn Rasta? Do I turn to Islam? Do I turn Christian? Do I do this? There's so many schools of thought. And I would just say it's just to go within and it's all a part of the journey. I don't disregard my Christian space and that time of my life. I don't disregard it. It was the foundation of my spiritual understanding.
Oh, good, nice.
So I don't know if you. Sorry. Anyway, sorry. I was going to say whether you had a question, Lee. I have a couple things, and I may go on a bit of a tangent, but hopefully there'll be some questions that will offspring from there. So, like, there was something you said, or something that I picked up from obviously my research, where it says that that your love for humanity ties Elizabeth's struggle, and obviously I can hear that also in your voice, but also in your process, obviously in writing your book, and also going back to the church. I'm sure you had many, many questions. And I had a conversation with someone today, and I had a conversation with someone yesterday, and I articulated these views today. And they were asking me, I think, as to why. So I'm in the process of writing a book. So, like, in my process in writing this book, I said that I've like, this book has helped me actually ask a lot of questions of myself. So it's allowed me to go back into my past, not only my past, but go into the future, and then ask questions as to my parents' past, and to an extent their future as well. And with what I'm going to say is, well, I don't know how, it's not alarming in any way, shape or form, and some people may question what I'm going to say, but what I said to this person today was, I've got a few ghosts that I intend on burying. And that may sound quite strong. I know, and this thing Lee's laughing. That may come across quite strong. But I didn't realize how many, not ghosts in my closet, but yeah, I want to say my closet, but I saw ghosts in other people's closets, which actually I personally feel can't afford to come forward with me in the future, whether it's my future or potentially let's say my kids' future. I haven't got any kids at this moment in time. I'm not due any kids or anything along those lines. But I told myself I can't allow this to go any further than here. And that's a wider conversation, if I'm being honest. But you've been through a lot yourself, and obviously in writing the book, did you feel that you had a number of questions that you felt you needed to ask of yourself, which were quite it demanded you, like, went quite deep into your soul, no pun intended, as to answering those questions?
I think that I'm my worstest critic, in the sense that because of the types of relationship that I've been in, it's caused me to become my worstest critic. So I have a good. In terms of writing the book, my main realization was the patterns of dysfunctional relationship and why I was having those patterns, why I was continuing to find myself in relationships that were dysfunctional or abusive. Is that?
Yeah, so you kind of cut out there, but I think you were saying, does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, I think it does make sense in that you've made the decision that you wanted to, which kind of leads me on to my second question, really, because it looks like you've gone into your past and you've kind of reviewed and analyzed what you've gone through with the purpose of bettering yourself, but at the same time educating other people as well. And like other things that I picked up obviously from my reading and research about yourself is that it says with over 15 years of study, research and experience working within the public sector, it says that you embody like passion for change, mentality, spiritually and also physically. Can you explain your study? And you may have gone through your experiences, but what you do now?
You're breaking.
So
you're breaking up.
So do you want me to say that again?
I'm just the last part of what you were saying.
Okay, cool. So it said like with over 15 years of experience, with 15 years of study, research and experience working in the public sector, it says that you embody change spiritually and physically. Can you explain your study? I think you've gone through your experiences already, but what you do now?
My study is merely, I've looked into the psychological aspect of self, of understanding true self. So over the years, especially whilst being in Christendom, it's really trying to understand the self, the inner man, and who that inner man, that person is. So it's grouped together with psychological, mental health, and obviously the spiritual and the spirit man. And then basically just having books around me that can help me to embrace, us or me as a person and what the true self looks like.
Speaking on books and writing, what was your process, and was your process of writing almost therapeutic?
Right, so writing has always been my thing. So from a very young age, I've always wrote, journaled. I had boxes full, I've actually lost all of these things, but I had boxes full of journals. I used to dream a lot, so I'd be writing down dreams and stuff like that. So what was the question?
Was your writing process therapeutic?
Oh, my writing process. I find life when I write. And I almost feel like I dance when I write. I almost feel like they call it a catharsis. A catharsis. So it is. I dance. I come alive when I write. It's very much a deep-rooted passion. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to get up and write about this experience. Writing has been me. When I was writing this, when I wrote this book, I was mid-writing a novel, and that novel I'd had the concept. I dreamt the whole concept, and I was mid-writing that concept, mid-writing that novel, and I literally just stopped and was just like, okay, let me write this book. Let me get this book out of me. And I didn't even expect it to be, so weighty.
Okay.
I just kind of like, I didn't expect it to be as weighty as it came. So, yeah.
Speaking of some of the books, what are some of the books that you would read to help with some of your research and again, just your writing process?
Critical Thinking by Richard Paul. There's Concepts and Tools by Richard Paul. This is one of my favorites. It's quite beat up. but this is
I got that.
A New Earth, but you got it.
Yeah,
you
come
know.
on, come on.
So that really helps to understand the ego and pain bodies.
100%.
One that I'm taking quite a lot of comfort in at the moment, because it's called the Surrender Experience by I can't remember the name of the author, but I'll give it to you by the end. Something Singer. I think it's Michael A. Singer.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks of this surrender experience, but he really shows how surrendering to the infinite part of us and to the soul gets us through in life. And he's on a corporate level and owns a multi-million-pound business. So sometimes we have that aspect of spirituality, whereas we feel like we're just, you know, woe is me, I'm undone, you know, and that we're not supposed to have nothing, and we're not supposed to experience wealth or any of those things. And he really just shows and examples about going into self and just surrendering to life and allowing life to happen. Allowing life to happen, and how he functioned, especially in the corporate world, how he functioned whilst relying on his spirit person, on his spirit man. So that's a book that I'm really, you know, engroven in at the moment.
I was actually going to ask you about the surrendering of self, like, and understanding that concept, because not to say that I'm aware of it, I've heard of it, but I'm not privy to it. So if you could kind of expand on what that means and how you go about it in your life.
Okay, so for me, from my experience and from the tools that I feel like I've learned from my experience, I've learned no longer to place responsibility on anything that is external. I've learned that life is no longer going to happen to me. I'm in control. I'm responsible for my life. And so with that comes the capacity to now begin to master self. So when you're faced with a circumstance, someone might say, "Wait, no, man, you've got a resistance, yeah?"
Yeah.
And you'd be like, "No, man, that person's violating. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that."
Yeah.
But a true power is for you to learn to surrender that egoic part of yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense? For
Yeah.
you to surrender. So an outsider would say, "Oh man, you failed, man. How you make that man overthrow you?" But it's not really about the external person, because you're not submitting to that external person. I'm submitting to myself. I'm surrendering to myself. And it's for us to really start to learn the power of surrendering to ourselves. That's a way of mastering self and overcoming self and taking responsibility.
Okay, I guess it does link to The New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, because in that book he mentions, and this is what one of the major keys that I'd say I took from that book personally, was your ego being a separate entity. Like,
yes,
there's like your inner self, then there's the ego that's always trying to make you react. And as you said, in that scenario, your ego will react to that person saying, "Oh, you got violated and this and that. What are you gonna do about it? You're gonna ride out, boom, boom, boom." Your ego's gonna be like, "Yeah, come, let's do this thing." But your inner self is like, "No, this is just an external situation that's happening. It's not me personally that's being attacked and being put in a certain way." But your ego will take that, and again, as he's explained it, it's a separate entity. It's always looking for that validation. So,
yes,
yeah, so it can actually feel useful, like it's doing something, and it's, whether it's good or bad, as far as it's concerned, it's doing something in that moment and in that reaction.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's how it gains power, and it's for you to, as you said, have that self-mastery to take that power back from the ego and be able to control it. That's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. In my book, I call it an objective phenomenon. So when stuff happens to you in life, it's something for you. It's something for you to overcome. That thing has visited you because it's going to show you a part of who you are and something that you need to overcome. So not staring away, but my relationship that spurred me on to write this book was very much that relationship mirrored my subconscious thought. That relationship that I had mirrored the narrative that was deep within, inside of me. And so whilst I spent a lot of time trying to convince this person that I wasn't this and that, I had to take the responsibility of where my subconscious thought was actually echoing or mirroring the narrative in which he was bringing to me. So instead of seeing him as an enemy or seeing him as something that, you know, is there to bring me down, I reference him as a personal trainer. It's someone that objective phenomenon is for me to overcome. It's mirroring something that's going on inside of me, my subconscious thought. And so it's for me to change that subconscious thought, which is a very hard thing. It's a hard thing, I'm not even gonna lie.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey. Yeah.
I would say that you reference, I know you, between yourself and French have referenced, I want to say 2 or 3 books, but it sounds like you have a wealth of knowledge, not only by way of experience, but by way of actually reading as well. And I don't even know what my question is. I was going to ask if you can, to an extent, maybe outline more books that you've actually read, or maybe to an extent even how long you actually have been reading. Because whilst you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, you come across very, very much like someone who's, I don't want to say been in the church for a number of years, but you know how pastors are almost like orators by way of the way they communicate and how powerful they are by way of delivering their message. And I will say that's almost the way that you came across in some of the stuff that you were saying, in referencing these, I don't even know how I would say it, referencing these terminologies.
What's the question, Pete?
What's the question?
Oh, sorry, no, no, apologies. No, like, how long? So essentially, maybe how long have you been reading, and like, what's the scope to your reading?
Okay, so I've always been a reader as a child, as much as I loved writing. I think I stopped reading maybe coming up to my 20s. Then I started my early 20s. When I started going back to church, then I started reading, picking up the Bible, so on and so forth. My reading is mainly reference. Okay. And I'm glad sometimes I read and I take in knowledge, and sometimes it doesn't always stick. Yeah. It's not always digestible. So with me, when it comes to reading, it's something that has to really connect with me for me to be able to articulate it back to you. Mm-hmm. So I can read something and it can be logical, but if it doesn't stick with me and it doesn't connect with me, then I can't spit it back to you. I can't tell you, I can't go into it. Yeah. But sometimes I'll be like, oh God, why can't this stick? Why can't it stick with me? But I'm actually glad, because it makes me have to speak out of my soul. Does that make sense? It makes me have to speak from here, from the deepest part of me, from a deep conviction.
So go on, apologies.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, so I mean, so like kind of even speaking to what my question was, because there wasn't a question to begin with. What gravitates you to pick up a book? Because it sounds like, you know, I don't want to say, I mean, like your title's quite powerful, all right? And that will kind of gravitate you towards picking up your book. And you've explained obviously your story. So when you're looking at a shelf or when you're looking at titles, why and how do you pick up these books?
I don't know if I've got a true answer to that, because I'll be passing and see someone leave a box outside their house with books, and I'll be picking them up. So it's not always like anything that's like, wow, like somebody might recommend a book to me, or do you know what I mean? I don't know if there's anything that makes me say, oh, I'm going out to choose this title. I think it just depends on my space. I think it depends on, I've just always had a love for books. And so whether it's recommended, whether it's given, yeah, I don't know if I've got a true answer for that, if you get what I mean. I don't know if I've got a perfect answer.
I think you've answered it well enough.
You surrender to the process.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, cool. Go on, mate.
Yeah. One of the things, or kind of bullet points, I remember when we kind of set this meeting up, there was some kind of bullet points we said we might kind of float around. And one of them was kind of the importance of vision. And I just want to touch on why that's important to you and why you think it's important to people in general.
Okay, so obviously the title of my book is The Soul Rebellion Journal, an alternative approach to narcissistic recovery. So this book came out of I don't want to term it in a way that wants to disrespect the person, because at a point there was love, and there still is love. What was the point that I was making?
So the importance of vision and kind of...
vision, that's right. So whilst I was in this relationship and feeling very trapped and losing myself, completely lost myself and become very frigid, even minute, small little tasks I couldn't carry out because I wasn't sure. I was always second guessing myself. And the thing that bailed me out was vision. The thing that bailed me out, the fact that this is not what I wanted. This is not what I want for myself. This is not taking me the place where I see myself going. This is not it. And that was my saving grace, was my capacity and my ability to see further than my circumstance. That was my saving grace. Okay. And that's why it's so important if you don't have vision, my mom would have said any breeze can blow you. Do you understand? You go with any breeze that blow you. So if you've got vision, you have, and I talk about all of these things in the book. You become intentional. You become intentional, even though you might not be hitting goals. You still going towards this way because that's where the dream is. That's where I see myself. Yeah. So that's the importance of having vision.
You hit the nail on the head, because my next follow-up question was going to be, if you're in an environment or in a situation where your judgment and vision is clouded and you can't see beyond the clouds, how do you then bring this vision or plan into motion, into life? And you said the word goals. I'm going to assume kind of having goals, having aims, having aspiration, having dreams, and maybe setting them and setting kind of milestones about how you're
Absolutely. But I will say this, because I'm quite a wild person I'm a wild person. I'm quite I wouldn't say a little disorganized, yeah? Can be at times. So I've set goals. I've set goals, and some of the goals that I've seen come into fruition came about for me just being intentional.
Yes.
They're intentional are like little steps. They're little steps towards the bigger thing. So it's less, you're less able to come off path. You have the vision over there. You're less able to come off path. If you're yes, you set goals. I'm 100% for goals, but not everybody is methodological in their way of thinking. So yes, write them down. I absolutely uphold writing down your goals and your visions, but also allow that flexibility.
Okay.
And to maintain, that intention. Whatever you're doing, just to maintain that intention, and you will get to that. You will get to it. Can I share a story with you?
Of course.
So, when I returned from Africa last year, February, and at that point, and I said, okay, I lost everything that I could possibly ever. I lost everything, and
Elizabeth, can I pause you? So we lost you
Yes.
just at the start of your story. So was the start of your story that you went to Africa and came back last year, and was that the start of your story?
Yes.
All right, cool. What about Africa? Because I need context. I'm a simple man, you know.
So I was in Gambia. I traveled to the Gambia. I was there. I was there for 3 months. It was the aim was that it was a business trip. So I was going there for product formulation.
Yeah.
So I was going there to start forming a skincare brand.
Okay.
It went left. There was happy, but it left. And I come back home. I lost everything. Everything that materialistically, and everything had just crumbled. But I kind of was, I don't know, I was just solid. Inside of me, I was solid. I was just like, okay, all right, what's the next move? So I come home and I listed 50 goals in 8 areas of my life. And I share this in the Soul Rebellion Journal. And one of those was to own some land.
Okay.
And obviously I had vision for this land and for a retreat some years prior. So when I come back, I was just like, I need to start going for these dreams, these aspirations. And I come back home and I was like, okay, I started writing down the goals. Within a couple of weeks, I get a call from Gambia. So we've got this plot of land. Are you interested in it? So I was like, yeah, all right, cool. All right, we'll see. But let me go back some years. I wrote down that I wanted to own a plot of land that was surrounded by water in a tranquil area. So there had to be tranquility because the idea was to build a retreat there. And so this person calls me and says, yeah, we got this plot of land. You interested? So I was like, all right, cool. Let me see so he went, we was negotiating prices. So I said, all right, I'm gonna forward. So within about 4 weeks later, I was back in Gambia. Okay. And I got there, perfect location. Surrounded, 3 parts surrounded by the Gambian River, 1 part surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. Is it the Atlantic Ocean? I think it's the Atlantic Ocean. So 1 part the Atlantic Ocean, 3 parts the Gambian River. Perfect. And I didn't even realize that 4 years prior, I had wrote down the intention. Yeah. And anyway, ended up bought this spot of land and even got it discounted. And I sat down and we're sitting down around the campfire. We're sitting around the campfire and ironically, Bob Marley's Soul Rebel was playing. So I sat down and I was like, oh my God, this is the land that I wrote 4 years prior. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I use that example to kind of like share with you that it's just being intentional. Sometimes we'll write down things in a methodological format and then we'll beat ourselves up because we haven't reached those goals or those targets. Stay intentional because it will happen for you. And that's what happens when you start to follow your soul. Things just start to happen for you. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, guys, got any questions? I'm gonna ask another one.
No, I don't know.
All right, cool. Just, I love your journey. So I absolutely love your journey from the parts you've touched on it, from when you were young, the whole kind of gang culture, and then kind of stepping away from that, getting back into the church. The story about the land you now own that you told us about. What I want to know is, because as we grow, sometimes with friends and kind of family, we can grow apart. Sometimes it's just life circumstances. So, yeah. from your younger years, when you were kind of on the roads and you kind of had affiliates and probably good friends at that point, is there any friends you've kept that you've able to pull through their own struggles and battles and keep hold of? Or have you just literally, because you've had intentions and you've been focused and you kind of got back in the church and you went on a different path, have you kind of...
Every single one of them are still my friends to this day.
Wow.
There might be a few people that drop off, you take different paths, but every single one of them are my friends. And I think actually my regret is that, especially in this time of COVID, like I've been around them a lot more and I try my little efforts. They're sound girls. And I think definitely more in this time of, COVID and obviously being on quarantine, I've, really thought, I need to be around my people even more. So there was never a drop off or a cut off like that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Everybody's grown up. We're all doing our things, but that love has always still been there. And I still hold every single one of them very close and dear to me.
When you was going through your change, as I'm going to put it, like I'm going to call the catalyst for that change, getting back into the church after the kind of house raid and stuff. Did anyone who was still on the roads and doing whatever they were doing, were they like, what are you doing? What are you playing at? Like, I'm trying to kind of get at that. Or were they just supportive of you and saying, you know what, if that's what you're going to do, I'm still here, I'm still your friend, I'm still here for you?
I think, do you know what? I think they almost loved it, in a sense that, like if I did turn up at a christening, or I did turn up at they'll always be the one to say, Liz, you're going to pray, bless the table. You understand what I'm saying? So there was never no one that was like, you see your real friends? Yeah. They're going to love you for you. They're going to love you no matter how you evolve and you change. They're going to love you for you. And they have done that. They've been consistent. They have been consistent. I love my girls. They've been consistent. And I have made new friends, but those day ones, they've been consistent. I can't knock that part. That's just how, that's how it's been.
And what's the plan going forward? I know you've got visions and plans. Is there anything you can share with us or not?
God. There's so much. I am embracing being multi-dimensional. Okay. I am learning that I do not have to do it in the way of the world. Just finding my feet in terms of business, in terms of growth, in terms of giving back, just finding my feet. My children developing, my children, they're solid children and they're developing in their own ways. And we have our family visions and they have their individual visions. That's really where it all stands. How can I forget? Along with the Soul Rebellion Journal, I am working on the Soul Workbook, which is a practical guide. So to support people in their journey of becoming or finding their self. And so it coincides with the chapters in the book, and it just gives worksheets and activities that will help work towards finding your true self.
Oh. Was you gonna talk there, Pete?
No, I wasn't gonna say anything. I was just scratching my ear.
Cool. Well, I'm gonna, with every guest, we play a game. I don't know if you guys want to ask any more questions before I get started on Don't Judge a Book.
No, go ahead, French.
No, what's it? My last, and I'm gonna get this right this time. Are you now? If we were your brethren, is it Elizabeth or Khadija? And are you now Muslim? And how did that come about? That was my. You might scratch what I said earlier out. It might be edited out.
I'm now Muslim. It comes with my understanding and my love of God being as infinite that he holds no form whatsoever, not a man, not a tree, not a cow, a goat, no form. And that's so powerful to me. And the concept of oneness in itself is something that we need to embrace within ourselves, that oneness with you and I, but that oneness and that center of your own self. So you have that, like I said, the polarity. You have that lower part of yourself and you have that higher part of yourself, and we're ever evolving and trying to frequent to that higher part, but sometimes we go down to that lower part, and it's all oneness. It's all a part of oneness. And so I've really learned them concepts, and I've learned metaphysics through Islam, of the reading of the Quran. So that's where I stand at the moment in terms of my religious understanding. I may not be viewed as a quote unquote hijab wearing Muslim, but I'm Muslim here. And also it echoes what's in my book, and that is surrender to, when I say soul, surrender to God, surrender to spirit, surrender to your heart, surrender to all of those things. And that's what Islam is really about. It's surrender. That's what it's there. And I really embody that and found that in my faith and my understanding of Islam.
Wicked.
All right, so Elizabeth, Kadisha, whatever. Yeah, we'll stay.
Yeah,
with
God, anything you want to call me,
Miss Young. All right. We play a game with our guests, and it's called. Obviously, you've heard of the term "Don't judge a book by its cover." So in this case, we're actually going to do that. I'm going to read out a series of titles of a book, and you're just going to judge them strictly based on their name, and the answer is either dope or trash. And we're just going to go through a few names, and you say dope or trash, and we'll call it a night.
Okay, cool.
All
cool.
Right. To Kill a Mockingbird.
Dope.
1984.
Dope.
Lord of the Rings. It's up to you, know. Lord of the Rings.
Dope.
Pride and Prejudice.
Dope.
50 Shades of Grey.
What's the movie? That's why I say dope.
50 Shades of Grey.
It's dope.
All right. The Old Man and the Sea.
Old Man and the Sea.
Yeah.
Just judge a book by the cover. I don't really know. Old Man and the Sea sounds dope.
All right. The Alchemist.
Dope.
The Worst Journey in the World.
Trash.
The Soul Rebellion Journal.
What? That one, dwarf it.
Yeah, that's it. Still.
I'm thinking if I should clear up the 50 Shades of Grey.
No, just leave it there. Just leave it there. We see. It's all good.
It's an embodiment of an expression.
Yeah, man.
So, yeah.
Of course.
Listen, it's been a pleasure. Honestly, like I've learned so much, and it's been a really interesting and informative talk, basically. So from myself, and I'm sure the rest of the team, just thank you for joining us. Yeah?
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You want to quickly shout out your socials, and obviously we know your book, The Soul Rebellion, but anything else you want to shout out and promote, and obviously we'll highlight that.
Yeah, so my page is infinite_nature. That's my Instagram page. And I should really try and work to get all my handles together as one handle. And my YouTube page is Soul Work TV. They're all new and young. Well, the Instagram's old, but they're young in their space. But yeah, you can follow me on either of those. And my website, thesoulrebellion.co.uk. to the mailing list for more information.
Wicked. All right. So yeah, listeners, viewers, subscribers, full_e_booked on the Instagram. You can get all of our kind of handles from the link tree in there. Am I right in saying that, P?
Yes, I believe you're correct this time.
All
Yeah.
right, and we'll aim to have this out in the next week or so. So look out for it, Elizabeth, Miss Young, Khadija.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you for joining us. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Again soon, I'm sure. Yeah, because you're interesting. We definitely want to speak to you again in the future.